Everyone walked past the man in the suit, until a little boy with a torn backpack knelt beside him and whispered, "Are you okay, mister?" That moment would change both their lives forever. The subway platform smelled like old gum and fried dough, and 9-year-old Caleb Monroe stood on tiptoes peering over a rusted railing. His backpack, ripped at the zipper, hung lopsided on his back, and he clutched a worn-out notebook filled with comic book sketches. His breath fogged in the morning chill. "Come on," he whispered, watching for the train. "I can't be late again." Behind him, his mom, Tiana, paced with her phone to her ear, muttering into voicemail. "Yes, Ms. Radcliffe, I know I'm scheduled. My sitter bailed. I had no listen. I'll be there in 20. She hung up and rubbed her forehead. Caleb pretended not to hear. He always pretended. "You okay, Ma?" Tiana offered a brittle smile. "Fine, baby. You got your lunch?" He hesitated. "Kinda." She sighed. "We'll fix it after school, I promise." The train screeched into view, sending a gust of cold wind through the station. Caleb grabbed her hand. She squeezed it back, a second too long, then let go. The penthouse was silent. Graham Whitmore, billionaire CEO of Whitmore Enterprises, stood in front of a floor-to-ceiling window, sipping black coffee that had long since gone cold. His reflection in the glass looked tired, grey in his beard, lines deep around his eyes. Behind him, his assistant's voice buzzed through the intercom. "Sir, your 9 a.m. board meeting." He didn't answer. Instead, he looked down. 20 floors below, yellow cabs darted like ants. New York pulsed, alive and hungry. He used to feel that way. Now, just hollow. On the table lay a birthday card, unopened. The handwriting on the envelope was familiar. He flipped it over without reading it. "Happy 27th, Dad, wherever you are." It wasn't signed. He didn't need it to be. Graham walked without his driver that morning. His security detail had argued, but he waved them off. He needed to breathe, to move. His chest had felt tight all night. He passed coffee carts, dogs on leashes, and tourists with cameras. He looked normal here, just another man in a tailored suit. Then the world tilted. One step onto the sidewalk, and the pressure in his chest sharpened. He blinked. The crowd spun. His knees buckled. No one stopped. Caleb was walking toward the library, tracing the edge of the curb with practiced balance, when he saw the man fall. He didn't think, just ran. The man's face was pale, lips slightly parted. People stepped over him. "Hey, mister," Caleb whispered, crouching. "You okay?" No answer. He shook him gently, looked up. "Someone call 911, he shouted. No one stopped. He pulled a coin from his pocket, a lucky quarter, and placed it in the man's hand. "You don't die, okay? Not before breakfast?" When the sirens finally came, Caleb was still there, sitting beside the stranger, one hand on his arm. The EMT glanced at Caleb. "Kid, you with him?" He nodded, even though he wasn't. "He helped me," Caleb said quietly. "So now I'm helping him." The paramedic stared for a second, then gestured. "Get in." What would you do if you saw someone collapse and no one stopped? Would you walk away or kneel like Caleb? Let us know in the comments below. The ambulance rocked gently as it darted through morning traffic. Caleb sat beside Graham's stretcher, feet barely touching the floor. The siren wailed above him, but his eyes stayed locked on the man's still face. A paramedic checked vitals and mumbled into a radio. Caleb didn't know what a CEO was. He only knew this guy looked like someone who never had to worry about skipping lunch. Yet now, he looked small. "You got a name, kid?" the EMT asked. "Caleb." "You family?" He hesitated, then said, "Not really, but someone had to stay." The paramedic studied him for a second, then nodded and said nothing more. Caleb leaned in, voice soft. "Hey, mister. I gave you my lucky quarter. That means you gotta wake up." Graham's eyelids flickered. Caleb sat back in surprise. Monitors beeped. Nurses whispered. The hospital smelled like hand sanitizer and stale coffee. Graham stirred. His head pounded, and his mouth tasted like metal. He blinked at the ceiling. A doctor came into view. "Mr. Whitmore? You fainted. Exhaustion and mild dehydration. We ran your labs. Your blood pressure was dangerously low. Graham groaned. Fantastic. He tried to sit up and winced. Where's my assistant? Before the doctor could answer, a small voice came from behind the curtain. He's fine, I think. He was awake for a second. Then he said a word I'm not allowed to say. Graham's brow furrowed. The curtain shifted, and in stepped a small boy with big eyes and a nervous expression. It's you again, Graham said hoarsely. You passed out, Caleb replied. I stayed with you because you looked like nobody else was going to. A beat. Graham blinked at him. Most people don't, he muttered. Well, I'm not most people, Caleb shrugged. The doctor cleared his throat. This young man refused to leave until we told him you were okay. Graham looked at the boy. Really looked. Torn hoodie, scuffed sneakers. That kind of stillness only found in kids who'd seen too much. What's your name? Caleb. You with your mom, or? She's at work. A pause. She doesn't know I'm here yet. Graham exhaled. You should probably let her know before she sends out the National Guard. Caleb smiled. Small, shy. She's too busy for that. Graham closed his eyes. The silence between them thickened, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was real. Caleb sat on a chair, legs swinging. A nurse handed him a juice box. He took it, quietly thankful. Graham sat beside him, IV in his arm, dressed in a hospital gown that looked absurd on someone who probably wore $3,000 suits. So, you always hang out in ERs? Graham asked. Only when people collapse in front of me. He glanced sideways. You really didn't have to stay. I know, Caleb said simply. But someone should have. That sentence stuck in Graham's chest like a splinter. He stared ahead for a long moment. Then, almost without thinking, he said, You remind me of someone. Your son? Graham turned to him, startled. How'd you know I had a son? You looked at me like I was him. A long pause. Graham chuckled, but it wasn't joyful. Smart kid. I watch people, Caleb said. Grown-ups say things even when they don't. Another silence. What happened to him? Caleb asked softly. Graham didn't answer, just stared at the floor. Caleb sipped his juice and didn't press. A nurse brought Graham his discharge papers. He moved slowly, gathering his things. Caleb hopped off the chair. Well, guess you'll be okay now. Thanks to you, Graham said. Caleb shrugged. You'd do the same. Would I? Graham asked quietly. The boy tilted his head. I think, maybe not before, but maybe now. Graham stared at him. Do you need a ride somewhere? He offered. Nah, I got a Metro card. Caleb patted his pocket. Still got $150 left. He turned to leave, then paused. Hey, mister. Yeah? Keep the quarter. Graham opened his hand. Sure enough, the coin was still there, warm from his grip. It's for good luck, Caleb said. You look like you could use some. Then he was gone, through the automatic doors, into the morning light. Graham stared at the coin. For some reason, it felt heavier than gold. Has a stranger ever shown you unexpected kindness? Or have you ever helped someone in need without expecting anything back? Share your story in the comments. You never know who needs to hear it. Graham sat at his marble kitchen island, untouched eggs cooling in front of him. He was dressed again in tailored navy, but something in him had shifted. The apartment's clean, modern silence felt louder than usual. He held the quarter in his hand, rolling it between his fingers like a talisman. Sir? His assistant Lana asked carefully from the doorway. You cancelled your investor call this morning. I know. Should I reschedule? No. She nodded slowly, then paused. People are asking questions, Mr. Whitmore. About yesterday, your collapse. He exhaled. Let them ask. And the boy? That made him look up. What boy? He asked too quickly. Lana gave a knowing smile. The one who waited in the ER with you. He didn't exactly go unnoticed. Graham stood abruptly. Let's move on. But he still clutched the quarter. The Bronx was noisy. Sirens, radios, arguments bleeding through the thin apartment walls. Tiana slammed a cabinet shut. You went where today, Caleb? The hospital, Caleb mumbled, standing by the cracked linoleum counter. "You followed a stranger into an ambulance?" "He fainted. Nobody else helped. I stayed." "You could have been taken. You could have been hurt." "He wasn't scary, he was sad." That stopped her. Caleb looked down. "You always say we should help people if we can." She sighed, rubbing her forehead. "I meant people we know, not billionaires with bodyguards." "He didn't have any." She blinked. "What?" "He was alone." The silence stretched. "You can't keep giving pieces of yourself to strangers, Caleb. You're still a kid." Caleb didn't say what he was thinking. He didn't feel like one. Later that night, Graham stood in his office staring at the business card the nurse had handed him. Scrawled on the back, "Caleb Monroe, 5th grade, PS 317. He held the office phone, finger hovering over a contact in his assistant's file. Tiana Monroe, emergency contact. He put it down, picked it up again, put it down. He turned to the window, frustration building in his chest. "What are you doing, Whitmore?" he muttered to himself. "You're not a savior. You're not that man anymore." But something inside him whispered otherwise. At recess, Caleb sat alone on a swing. His friends played tag. He just kicked at the gravel. His teacher, Ms. Hanley, approached. "You okay, sweetie? You've been quiet this week." He shrugged. "Just tired." "Your mom said you helped someone at the hospital?" Caleb perked up a little. "Yeah, a man fainted. I stayed with him." "That was very kind of you." Didn't feel like kindness. Felt like I just didn't want him to be alone. She smiled. "That's even more beautiful." He looked up at the sky. "I don't think he's going to call." Graham sat at the head of a massive table. His board members bickered about quarterly reports. He stared at his reflection in a polished water glass. He saw Caleb's eyes. His COO was talking about acquisitions. Graham stood up mid-sentence. "Gentlemen, I'm taking a leave of absence." Silence. "Effective immediately." "Sir, I'll remain a silent partner. Lana will forward all urgent items. Otherwise, don't call me unless something's on fire." As he walked out, his COO called after him. "Where are you going, Graham?" He didn't turn. "To return a favor. Have you ever regretted not reaching out when you had the chance? Did you let fear or pride stop you from connecting with someone? Tell us below." Lana stepped into Graham's study, arms folded. "You sure about this?" "No," Graham replied, tightening his cufflinks, "but that kid saved my life. I'm going to thank him properly. You've never even gone to your own charity gala. This one's not for me." He handed her a file, press release drafts, a foundation charter, a handwritten letter in an envelope. Lana raised an eyebrow. "You're serious about this?" "Dead serious," Graham said, picking up the envelope. "This isn't a PR stunt. No interviews, no headlines, just one dinner, that's all." Tiana opened the envelope at the kitchen table, mouth dropping open. "You what?" Caleb fidgeted in his chair. "I didn't do anything. He just found my school somehow." She held up a thick invitation embossed with gold lettering. Inside was a handwritten note. "Caleb, you stayed when no one else did. I'd be honored if you'd join me and a few guests this Saturday. You and your mom, of course. Come as you are, no pressure. GW." "This has to be a mistake," Tiana said. "It's not," Caleb whispered. He remembered. The venue was glass and marble, filled with city elites, string music, and flowing champagne. But Caleb's tiny hands gripped his mother's fingers tightly as they stepped through the giant doors. He wore a thrift store button-up. Tiana wore her best dress from church. Both looked wildly out of place, until Graham saw them from across the room, and smiled. He walked toward them, not like a billionaire or a CEO, but like a man seeing something he'd hoped would show up. "You came," he said to Caleb. "You invited me," Caleb answered, almost sheepish. "I meant it. This is my mom, Tiana." Graham extended a hand. "Pleasure." Tiana looked suspicious but shook it. "Why us?" "Because your son reminded me what it means to be human." Tiana blinked. Nobody ever said that about Caleb before. Then they haven't been paying attention. The gala buzzed around them, but Graham sat Caleb and Tiana at a private table away from the noise. There was no press, no cameras, just soft music and real food. "You know what I thought the first time I saw you?" Graham asked Caleb, cutting into his steak. "That I was annoying?" Graham smiled. "No, I thought, there's a kid who doesn't flinch at anything. I do flinch. I just hide it." "Me too," Graham said quietly. Tiana watched them, studied Graham. Something in her softened. "You didn't have to invite us," she said. "I know," he replied, "but I needed to." After dessert, Graham stood and cleared his throat. "There's one more thing, if I may." He reached beneath the table and pulled out a small box. Inside, a sketchbook, high-quality paper, a gold-etched cover. Caleb opened it. Inside the front page, "To Caleb Monroe, a true hero and a better artist than I ever was." Caleb stared at it. "How did you—" "I saw your notebook at the hospital. The robot with wings." Caleb's eyes widened. "You remembered?" "I remember everything that matters," Graham said. "That's what dads are supposed to say," Caleb murmured. The table went still. "Then I'm honored," Graham said, voice low. As the car pulled up, Graham turned to Tiana. "Look, I know this is unconventional, but I'd like to spend more time with Caleb. Maybe take him out for lunch next weekend. Just get to know him." Tiana's jaw clenched slightly. "I've seen people like you before, Mr. Whitmore. Powerful, charming, generous, and then gone. I won't vanish. Don't promise that to my son unless you mean it." Graham met her gaze. "I do." Caleb looked up at his mom. "Can I, Ma? Just one lunch?" Tiana stared at Graham for a long time. Then finally, "One lunch." The sky was silver with clouds, and the car ride had been quiet. Caleb pressed his nose to the window as the gates opened onto the Whitmore estate. "This place is huge," he whispered, "like Billionaire huge." Graham smiled. "It's mostly empty rooms. Gets real quiet at night." "Don't you get scared?" Caleb asked. "Not of the dark," Graham replied. "Only of silence." Caleb didn't understand at first, but he tucked the words away. Caleb wandered into Graham's study while the older man made sandwiches. The room smelled like leather, old books, and cologne. Rows of awards lined the walls. But Caleb's attention landed on a photo on the corner of Graham's desk. It was old, slightly faded. A boy, maybe 6 years old, with bright eyes, standing in front of a Christmas tree. A man beside him knelt with an arm around his shoulder. The man was unmistakably younger Graham. "Who's this?" Caleb asked, holding it up when Graham returned. Graham froze. The tray in his hand wobbled slightly. "That's Evan." "Your son?" Caleb asked quietly. Graham nodded. "Yeah." "Where is he now?" A pause. Graham set the tray down carefully. "Gone." The air changed. "Gone like moved?" Graham looked out the window, his voice barely a whisper. "Gone like buried." Silence. Caleb put the frame back. He didn't ask anything else. But Graham sat down next to him and finally spoke. "He was 7. We were on vacation. My wife and we'd argued about something stupid. I wasn't paying attention on the road." He inhaled sharply. "I was driving." Caleb said nothing, but leaned just a little closer. "The car flipped. I came out with a broken leg. My wife left soon after. She couldn't look at me anymore." "Wasn't your fault," Caleb said softly. "Doesn't matter," Graham replied. "It still happened." He stared down at his hands. "I built this empire with these hands, made billions, but I couldn't hold on to the only thing that mattered." "That's why you were walking alone when you fainted," Caleb realized. "You were trying to forget." "I was trying to breathe," Graham said. The hospital room smelled like antiseptic. Graham, 15 years younger, stood beside a small hospital bed where Evan lay still, tubes in his nose, bruises across his tiny cheek. He reached for his son's hand. "You're gonna be okay, buddy," he whispered. "We're gonna go home. I promise." But Evan never woke up. and Graham never forgave himself. They sat in silence, broken only by the sound of birds outside the window. Caleb finally spoke. "My dad left when I was 3. Graham looked over. He said he was going to get diapers and never came back. He picked at a loose thread on the couch cushion. I remember thinking maybe he got lost. I used to draw maps and leave them on the front porch. Thought maybe he'd use one to find his way home." Graham's throat tightened. "He didn't," Caleb added. "I'm sorry," Graham said. "I used to think it was 'cause I wasn't worth staying for." That broke something in Graham. He reached out gently, hand resting on Caleb's shoulder. "That's not true," he said. "You're one of the few people I've ever met who's actually worth staying for." Caleb looked at him, eyes brimming, not with tears but with disbelief. Caleb flipped to a blank page in his new sketchbook. He began drawing quietly. Graham watched him. "What are you making?" "Something new," Caleb said. "Something that's not broken." Graham smiled faintly. "That sounds nice." "You can be in it," Caleb added. "Me?" "Yeah, but not in a suit, just you." He kept drawing. "Can I ask you something?" Caleb said. "Anything. Do you think maybe Evan would have liked me?" Graham's eyes stung. "He would have loved you." Sunlight poured through the tall windows. The house, once cold and echoing, now buzzed softly with life. In the kitchen, Graham and Caleb stood over the counter scrambling eggs. "That's too much salt," Caleb shouted. "You said a pinch." "Not a fistful," Caleb laughed. Graham chuckled genuinely. "You sound like my wife did." "You were bad at cooking back then too?" "Worse," Graham smirked. "I burned cereal once." They laughed again, the sound bouncing off granite and tile like music. Later, they played chess in the sunroom. Graham taught Caleb strategy. Caleb taught Graham how to trash talk. "You sure you want to move that night, Mr. G?" "Pretty sure. 'Cause I'm about to ruin your whole legacy." Graham raised an eyebrow. "Legacy?" "I Googled you. You're like Elon Musk, but less weird." Graham laughed so hard he almost knocked the board over. "Is your mom okay with you roasting billionaires?" "Only if they deserve it." They high-fived over checkmate. That afternoon, Caleb set up his sketchbook on the back porch while Graham answered emails nearby. "You check your phone a lot," Caleb said, shading a page. "It's a habit." "Bad one." Graham looked up. "You drawing me again?" "Maybe." "Do I look cooler this time?" "I gave you hair." Graham laughed. "That's generous." A pause. "I like it here," Caleb said suddenly. Graham nodded. "Me too. It's the first place I've been that feels quiet but not empty." The line landed hard. Graham didn't reply. He just looked at him with quiet pride. As night fell, they curled up on the massive couch, popcorn bowl between them, watching the Iron Giant. Halfway through, Caleb leaned against Graham's side, tired eyes blinking slowly. "Mr. G?" "Yeah?" "Thanks for not being weird." "You're welcome, I think. And thanks for not trying to be my dad or anything." Graham went still. "You already kind of are," Caleb murmured, eyes fluttering closed. Graham looked down at the boy curled against him. Something in his chest ached, not in pain, in recognition. Much later, Graham stood alone in the hallway, staring at an old family photo. Evan's face smiled back at him. He whispered just loud enough for no one to hear. "You'd have liked him, son." He closed his eyes. "He's helping me remember how to love again." From behind, Caleb appeared in pajama pants, rubbing his eyes. "You talking to the wall?" he asked sleepily. Graham smiled. "Yeah." And it answered. Before bed, Caleb handed Graham a sketch. It showed Graham, smiling in a sweater, sitting on a couch. Beside him, Caleb, holding popcorn. At the top, "Found family." Graham stared at it for a long time. He didn't say a word, but he knelt down, pulled Caleb into a hug, and whispered, "You didn't just help me that day, Caleb. You brought me back to life." Caleb hugged him tighter. "You too." Graham sipped his coffee in the kitchen, humming. Caleb was still asleep upstairs, curled up in a blanket. Lana's call came in with urgency. "You need to see the news. Right now." He turned on the TV. Headline: Billionaire CEO's unusual bond with inner-city kid sparks controversy. PR stunt or genuine story? Photos filled the screen. Caleb at the gala. Caleb and Graham on the porch. Even a blurry one of Caleb asleep on the couch during movie night. Graham's face hardened. "I didn't authorize any of this." "Well, someone did," Lana said. "Social media's exploding. Some are saying you're using the kid to soften your image." "That's not true." "Doesn't matter. It's out there now." He shut the TV off. The quiet in the house was suddenly suffocating. Tiana opened the door to find reporters on her stoop. Flashbulbs, questions. "Ma'am, is it true your son is living with Graham Whitmore? Do you plan to sue for custody? Has Mr. Whitmore offered you financial compensation for access to your son?" She slammed the door. Then her phone rang. A school administrator. "Ms. Monroe, due to the attention Caleb is receiving, we're putting him on temporary academic leave for his safety." "Your what?" She arrived in a fury, coat half-zipped, eyes blazing. "Get my son, now." "Tiana, please. You said this wasn't for show. You said no cameras, no press." "I didn't leak anything, I swear to you." "Doesn't matter, he's on the news. They're dragging my parenting, my job. His school suspended him for the attention." Caleb came to the landing. "Ma, go pack your things, Caleb, we're leaving." "No, wait." Graham stepped forward. "You promised," Tiana snapped. "You promised you wouldn't vanish. You did worse. You put a target on his back." "I was trying to help." "You don't help by turning someone's child into your redemption arc." Silence. Caleb clutched his backpack. "You said I was family," he whispered. "You said I mattered." "You do," Graham said instantly. "Then why does it feel like I'm a problem now?" Graham stepped forward. "Caleb, I didn't ask for this story to come out." "But you let it happen," Caleb said. And just like that, the silence became unbearable. Tiana walked out, hand on her son's shoulder. Graham didn't stop them. Later that night, Graham sat in the living room staring at the sketch on the wall. Found family. He took it down, held it, tried to breathe. But the house was silent again, not peaceful, empty. Caleb sat on his mattress, knees pulled to his chest. He stared at his half-drawn robot sketch, then closed the book. His mom passed by the doorway, pausing. "You want to talk about it?" He shook his head. She stood in the silence, then said gently, "He made a mistake. But I saw how he looked at you, Caleb. That man loves you. Not for show. For real." "Then why didn't he stop us?" "Because maybe he didn't want to make it worse." Caleb didn't answer, but he held the quarter in his palm, the one he gave Graham, the one Graham had quietly slipped into his backpack when they hugged goodbye. The estate was quiet again, but not peaceful. Graham sat at the piano bench in the corner of the study. He hadn't played in years, but his fingers hovered over the keys, frozen. Across the room sat Caleb's sketchbook, left behind by mistake. He opened it, slowly, like something sacred. The last page was unfinished, a drawing of the two of them sitting on the porch swing. There was no outline of Graham's face yet, just a blank shape where the man should be. His voice caught. "You left me out, just like I left you." He closed the book and stared out the window. Graham picked up a pen. He began to write. "Caleb, you said I made you feel like a problem. That was never my intent. I've spent years building walls around my heart to keep from remembering what I lost. And then you showed up. You sat with me in a hospital when no one else would. And you cracked something open I thought was long dead. You didn't just help me. You made me want to be better again. If that made your life harder, I'm sorry. I was trying to make it matter. You matter, Caleb. Not because of what you did, but because of who you are. Mr. G." He sealed the envelope and stared at it for a long time. Rain tapped the window like soft knuckles. Caleb sat on the couch, remote in hand, but the TV was off. Tiana folded laundry behind him. He didn't even call, Caleb mumbled. Sweetheart, maybe he's just giving you space. Or maybe he changed his mind. No, she said gently. I saw the way he looked at you. That man doesn't change his mind, he just hesitates like he's afraid to lose again. So am I. Tiana set the laundry down and sat beside him. You've got two choices, Caleb. You can wait for someone to come find you, or you can go remind them you're still here. He looked at her. You think he's waiting for me, too? I think he's hurting as much as you are. The storm was still coming down when Graham heard the knock. He opened the door, and there he was. Caleb, drenched. Backpack slung over one shoulder, quarter in his hand. Neither spoke for a moment. Graham's voice cracked first. You'll catch a cold. You caught worse. A long silence. Then Graham knelt, eyes level with the boys. I wanted to call, 100 times, but I didn't want to mess things up even more. You didn't mess them up, Caleb said quietly. The world did. You just didn't fight it. Graham nodded, ashamed. I got scared of hurting you. But leaving did. Graham nodded again. I know. Another beat. Then Caleb reached out, opened his hand, and showed the quarter. You gave it back, he said. That meant something. Graham looked at him, voice barely above a whisper. You want to come in? Caleb nodded. If you still want me to. Graham stepped aside, held the door open. Always. They sat on the couch in silence, rain still falling softly outside. Did you mean it? Caleb asked finally. Mean what? That I matter. Graham's eyes glistened. More than you'll ever know. Caleb leaned in slowly, resting his head on Graham's shoulder. Can I finish the drawing now? Yeah, Graham whispered. Draw the whole thing. The cafeteria buzzed as chairs scraped across linoleum floors. Caleb stood near the corner of the stage, wearing a white button-up shirt and a crooked clip-on tie. It was the school's spring talent showcase, and for the first time in his life, Caleb had signed up. He was nervous. Really nervous. Then he spotted him, Graham, standing in the back row of folding chairs, no security detail, no suit, just jeans and a blazer. Holding a worn sketchbook in one hand, Caleb's sketchbook. Caleb smiled. A nod passed between them. And with that, he walked onto the stage. He didn't perform magic tricks or sing. He spoke. This is a story about a robot with wings, he said into the mic. He didn't start with wings, just a broken battery and a bunch of rust, but someone gave him a piece of their heart, even though they were hurting too. Kids shifted in their chairs. Teachers leaned in. And that piece made the robot fly, not because it was perfect, but because it mattered, because someone believed he could. He opened the sketchbook. This is him. This is me. Applause. Standing ovation. Somewhere in the crowd, Tiana wiped her eyes. And Graham? He just smiled. They stood in the schoolyard. Spring air was thick with warmth and music from open windows. You crushed it, Graham said, handing Caleb a Gatorade. I was shaking like a soda can, Caleb admitted. Still shook the whole room, Graham grinned. A pause. So, what now? Caleb asked. Graham looked at him serious. That's up to you. What if I want more weekends, or like dinner sometimes? Then I'll be there, every single one. You sure? Kid, you once gave me a quarter and a second chance in the same breath. You think I'm going to waste either of those? Caleb smiled, full and free. Weeks passed. Graham and Tiana sat at her kitchen table, stacks of paperwork between them. He doesn't need a savior, Tiana said. I know, Graham replied. He just needs someone who shows up. So do you. A beat. Then she signed. It wasn't an adoption. It was mentorship, shared guardianship, a choice, not a rescue, something whole. Graham walked into his office one evening and found something new on his desk. Framed. It was the finished sketch, him and Caleb on the porch swing, both smiling, stars overhead. In the corner, a handwritten caption. You don't need wings to save someone. He picked it up slowly. pressed his fingers to the glass. It was a Saturday morning. Graham and Caleb were walking out of a bakery, laughing over blueberry muffins. Then Graham froze. Across the street, a man in a suit collapsed on the sidewalk. People walked past. Caleb watched Graham. Graham didn't hesitate. He ran, kneeling beside the stranger. "Hey, sir. You okay?" He looked up. Caleb was beside him, small hand already dialing 911. Graham smiled. Full circle. "Have you ever been the person who stayed when no one else did? Or did someone once change your life with just one kind choice? Tell us in the comments. Your story might help someone else believe again.